From the land of lakes, this is 10,000 Takes, brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another week as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. And Wally, let's talk some baseball out of the gate. The Twins remain on top of the AL Central. I think it would take a collapse for this team to not win a very mediocre division. Nobody else seems to care.
Well, I think you're giving the division too much credit. Mediocre. How about terrible? I'm calling it the American League Comedy Central.
That's a good one, and it really is if you look at the records. So it's been an interesting week, though, for the Twins. They're playing out of the division, so they don't have any of these laugh track teams like the Guardians, Tigers, White Sox, or Royals. You get a first-place team in Milwaukee on the road, the I-94 border battle, and then you get Texas coming in this weekend to the Twin Cities. And I know they've struggled a little bit as of late, but this is a very good Rangers team. And that division's the opposite. The AL West with the Astros, Rangers, Mariners, and say what you want about the Angels, but at least they try.
Well, they tried. They tried to make some moves at the deadline. They didn't give away their team like Cleveland did at the deadline, despite the fact they were one game out. No, the American League West is as good a division as there is right now, really. With those three teams, they're all multiple games over 500. It looks like all three will make the postseason. It's going to be tough sledding down the stretch because, as you know, the American League East is awfully good as well with Tampa and Baltimore. Although, I wonder, I don't think that Toronto quite has enough. I think that you will see the three teams from the West. You'll see, the Twins and then two from the East. I think that those are going to be your teams this year.
Well, and we still have, a month and a week left of the season, even a little bit more than that. So it is a grind. This 162 games is a marathon, but you have to find another gear when you get to September, especially if you're chasing a playoff spot. So a team like Seattle, which is coming on, they got to still keep the foot on the gas pedal. Houston, they're used to this stuff. Texas, can the Rangers sustain it?
I don't know. That's the team that I'm concerned about here because they haven't done it for a while. They have sputtered in years past when they've had the guys, and they have them this year for sure. Let's see if they can hang on.
This is why they brought in Bruce Bochy. Because he won all those rings in San Francisco. So he's going to be able to look them in the eye and say, okay, you haven't done anything yet. Exactly. You got to kick it into high gear.
Exactly. And you want to win the division. They want to get that first round bye. You don't want to have to play that mini series. I mean, Cleveland took out Tampa last year, nearly took out the Yankees. And anything can happen. You saw your Dodgers almost get eliminated after a huge season last year. So, and for the Twins, what these series mean now, I mean, they're going to win the division. They're going to win it going away. They'll be one of the first, other than the Dodgers, to clinch. I don't think there's any question. But the Twins need to prove that they belong, even though they're only, a half dozen games over 500. That's where the rubber meets the road for the Twins. Can they sustain and play against these teams in the upper echelon of the American League? Because let's face it, that's who you got to play in the postseason, and the postseason has not been kind, rumor has it, to your Minnesota Twins. Now, these guys aren't going to be blamed for what happened starting back in 2002 or whatever it is, the 18-game losing streak. But at the same time, they need to get it out of the way immediately.
If they add to the misery.
Oh, it just builds.
And don't win a playoff game and go one and done. It does build, and Rocco's going to feel the heat. At least from the fans and the media. I don't know what the Pohlad family's thinking. And they're the ultimate decision maker in all of this. But, and so they're going to have a mini-series. They're going to, if they make it, I want to couch it. They still haven't wrapped it up.
Right, of course.
But if you assume they're getting in, they'll be at home. So would you rather see Minnesota play somebody like Tampa, Texas, or Houston? Just my gut tells me you want to avoid the Astros.
Yeah, I think so.
Would stay way away from the Astros. Now, Tampa Bay, I don't really think, earlier in the year you wouldn't want to play them either, right? They started 13-0, historic beginning to an MLB season, but they're in free fall mode. They don't have Shane McClanahan, one of the top pitchers in Major League Baseball. Wander Franco has wandered away.
Oh, yeah.
So it might be a good time to see Tampa.
Yeah, and the McClanahan thing, actually, the injury to McClanahan coincides with their free fall. I mean, it started a little bit before that, but he's been out for a couple of months now, and that is just about when Tampa started going down the drain. I mean, he was really good. He was going to win the Cy Young if he continued the way he was early on in the season. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that the Twins and Tampa, that'd be a decent matchup for them. You know, we're going to find out how they fare against Texas. That's coming up.
And they still have to go to Arlington, too, in the regular season. So,
and don't short sell, as you said, Seattle. I think that Seattle is a team that could be reckoned with.
That was my April pick. I know you went with Houston.
I did.
In the American League. I won't even tell you who I picked in the National League because I would have no street cred if I revealed that.
The Mets.
The Mets.
Way to go.
So I might as well pick the Jets this year in the NFL.
Yeah, well, that could happen. You never know.
The Mets or the Padres? Who's had the more catastrophic, disastrous season? Which team?
Well, which team spent more? Probably the Mets, didn't they?
And they wanted Carlos Correa and didn't get him.
Oh, boy. And I'm not so sure that would have been a big hurt for the Twins anyway, because Correa really hasn't added much this year.
No, he's batting right around 230, and
he's been okay. He's good defensively. He's really good defensively, but he's okay.
Here's where he can rewrite the narrative this season. And maybe he hikes the average up in September.
And he did it last year in September. Let's not forget that.
October.
I agree.
Because he's played with Houston on those great Astros teams. If he can come out and catch fire in October, we might have our own Reggie Jackson.
I was just going to say, we'll get our own Mr. October. Maybe he'll have a candy bar, too.
There you go. All right. Stick around. Much more coming up. This is 10K Takes, your Carlos Correa picker.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earrings. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
The excitement is real at Fond du Lac Casino. With over 650 spots to play, there's always something going on right in the heart of downtown Duluth. Come in to enjoy 2 floors of entertainment where you'll find some of the hottest new games along with a number of the old favorites. Play at your comfort level all the way up to high stakes where the payouts can be huge. Relax in a comfortable atmosphere and maybe get a beverage while you gather and have fun with your friends. Open 7 days a week so you can
have a great time out at Fond du Lac.
Well, the NFL's regular season is just about upon us. We're about, roughly 2 weeks away from things kicking off around the National Football League, and we are joined now by former Minnesota Vikings great Carl Lee, part of the Vikings from 83 to 93, played in, 3 Pro Bowls, I believe, one of the 50 greatest Vikings of all time. Carl, thanks for joining us, number one. Number two, from afar, as you look at what the Vikings bring to the table in 2023, what are your impressions of this squad going forward?
I'm hoping, I am hoping that the offense has the ability to rise to the occasion, because I feel like where we have failed is when it's needed most. And unfortunately, that's maybe a quarterback situation. I'm not really sure if that's the big issue, but I think we have to be able to seize moments that are critical. I think we're fine during the season. I think we're fine in kind of regular games. I think we show up, we play well, we do all this kind of stuff, with the exception when it matters most. Those games that matter, we seem to not get the play that we need. And I think that's my fear, because that's where we win. That's where we are going to get to that playoff game, that NFC Championship game, that Super Bowl. Those are those kinds of games that I think that we have to win.
Carl, there's a lot of attention being paid to the new defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, who spent time in New England under Bill Belichick, head coach in Miami. Last year with Ed Donatel, they were a soft defense. They played like we jokingly call it a Tampa 8. Everybody laid back. Can a new scheme and being more aggressive and a new coordinator, can it make that much of a difference, or does it still come down to the people on the field?
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the people on the field. But I think the tie is that coordinator, those position coaches have to know what they had. And I'll go back to Floyd Peters, Pete Carroll. They come in. We go to bump and run, pressure, defense. We had the people. For whatever the reason, they saw the individuals that could play the bump and run. They could see, we had a Chris Dolman, we had a Keith Millard, Henry Thomas, John Randall, Al Noga. We had those kind of players that could get off the ball and create pressure. We had defensive backs that could play man to man. I'll make the case, I didn't even know that I was capable of that. I had never really truly played it until that group came in. And so I have to say, yes, I think a defensive coordinator, new defensive staff comes in. I think it's critical for them to understand what that team can do.
You reeled off a bunch of guys that if they weren't and aren't in the Hall of Fame, maybe they should be. You go down the list of Henry Thomas and Chris Dolman and yourself and, several others who played in that era. Does it still kill you that you guys didn't get to and win a Super Bowl? I mean, with those names and that roster that you guys had in some of those years, that must just bother you guys.
It does bother me. I don't live in it, but when you talk about it, yeah, it does bother us because, we beat what was considered the best team at that point. People were calling the 49ers the best team ever, and we go in and beat them, as a wild card team. And we go through, beating people very comfortable. And then we get into an NFC game and we just did not rise to the occasion. But I do believe that if we could have gotten there, I think we could have won the Super Bowl. And that's the difficult thing about it. But I agree with you on some of those names, not so much me, but that front line that we had was an amazing front. And those guys clearly, I think if I'm not mistaken, Henry Thomas may have the most sacks of a nose tackle in the NFL.
And to that point, Chris Dolman once told me, because I asked him, I said, you guys would have 10, 11 Pro Bowlers a year, yet you never got to the Super Bowl. And San Francisco was the team of the decade. And he said the difference was guys with the Vikings, it was so contentious between the players and Mike Lynn, they never got paid what they should have. Meanwhile, Eddie DeBartolo is treating the 49er players and coaches like his kids. He loved them, he paid them, and it showed on the field. He said the Vikings, you guys were playing for contracts. Do you agree with that?
I never really put it in that kind of a context, but yes, I do. I know, and this, God bless his soul, but Mike told me the way you get paid is you have to go, you have to be in a Pro Bowl. You got to do all these kinds of things. And I do all of those things. And I come back in after my first Pro Bowl and I'm like, okay, so, hey, I did it, and he looks at me and he says, yeah, you got to do it again, though. It just can't be one time. It motivated me, but it kind of killed the spirit because I felt like I would never really ever get paid there. And when I was going to the most money I was going to make with the Vikings, they cut me. So they never really ever paid me the work that I think I put in.
All right, let's switch back to this 2023 squad. First of all, does preseason mean anything at all anymore? I mean, we're down to 3 preseason games. There's a lot of talk that that's going to change in relatively short order, maybe in the next couple of years, go to 2 preseason games. What does preseason mean now these days anyway?
To me, for starters, nothing. Because, I mean, you're looking at guys that'll play one series. You know, they may play 2 series, they may play a quarter, and then they're out. I'm looking at some of these preseason games, and I'm looking at guys not even dressed on the sideline. So it's clear that they're not even going to risk those types of – for those games, they're not going to risk their players. For a guy that's a new player that needs to prove himself, it means everything. Yeah. You need to go out. You need to show that you can play. But for the starters, and the guys that the coaches already know what they can do, it's nothing. And they're showing that now. They're not even dressing. They're not even you're not even going to play. Yeah. And when you get to that point, it's clear that those guys, it's just a travel game or a home game that you're just sitting on the sideline watching some guys that you're hoping might make the team or might make the team better.
Yeah. Well, Carl, we appreciate you spending some time with us. We will definitely check in with you as the season rolls along, get some input from you, and hopefully we'll have some positive things to talk about with the Purple this year.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Carl.
He is Carl Lee, the former Minnesota Vikings great cornerback, right here on 10,000 Takes. More after this timeout. Stay with us.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
10,000 Takes, and it is football season, college football season kicking off next week. Your Golden Gophers will be at home against the University of Nebraska. How do you see this, and how do you see the season?
Yeah, the last of the Big Ten as we know it.
Right.
Before the Pacific Coast folks come in and invade the conference. Well, look, Nebraska at Minnesota on a Thursday night, Aug 31 at Huntington Bank Stadium. I know it's early. Win or lose, it's not going to define your season. But I think it's a critical game for both programs. Let's start with the Cornhuskers. Once upon a time, they were a powerhouse.
No doubt.
That has gone away. But that's the only game in town down in Nebraska. So the fan base, which is very loyal, they'll be up here spending money in bars and restaurants and hotels. They want this team back in at least top 25 contention. So they got a new coach, Matt Rule, who came from the Carolina Panthers and Baylor. Huge game for Nebraska. If they think they're getting back on track, they need to win it. For Minnesota, look at the schedule. If they don't beat Nebraska at home,
who are they going to beat?
Suddenly you've got Michigan. You've got Michigan State, Ohio State, Iowa, Purdue, Wisconsin. Illinois is good now. Let's not forget that.
Right.
Who are they going to beat? And they got North Carolina on the road.
Right. Well, they've got Northwestern.
Scandal-plagued Northwestern. There's a W, maybe.
Yeah, well, no, they'll beat Northwestern. Yeah, that's a great question. They have to win these games that are quote-unquote toss-ups, and especially at home in the Big Ten. Gophers have done well against the spread at home for all you bettors out there. They've done as well as anybody in the Big Ten this side of Ohio State and Michigan. So they're a good bet at home against the spread. Let's see how they do.
Well, and they've had success against Nebraska in the last few years.
They have.
But again, Nebraska is going to look at Minnesota and say, well, if we can get by the Gophers in Minneapolis, maybe we're starting to arc up. So I think it's a huge game.
We'll see how Ethan Ali Kekmanis does.
That's right.
You like that?
Very good.
Okay.
It's on Fox. I call him AK.
AK. Very good. Okay. I read something that you passed along to me about stadiums in the National Football League, and it was a survey done with all of the writers from The Athletic, which is an online sports venue where you can, journalist venue basically. And they put your favorite stadium at number 1 out of the 30 venues in the National Football League. The best stadium.
Were they liquored up?
I don't know. That's what were they smoking? Well, maybe they were in Minnesota. They were legally smoking weed when they did this. I wonder if you're allowed to legally smoke weed inside U.S. Bank Stadium.
I don't think you can smoke anything inside the House of Noise.
Well, so the House of Noise is number 1 on their list. Number 2 is SoFi. They didn't even have Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City in their top 5.
I cannot take any list seriously that omits Arrowhead, which is number 1 in my book. The tailgate scene is off the chain. They've got natural grass. You've got almost 80,000 fans in there. It's a sea of red, Kansas City Chiefs. Unbelievable NFL Sunday experience in Kansas City. So my criteria, which is much different, obviously, than the folks at The Athletic, if you play on field turf, your stadium's not going to make my top 5 or 10. I need natural grass. If you play in a dome, goodbye. Not cutting it. I want to be able to see the sky. I want a raindrop or a snowflake to maybe hit that grass.
Wait a minute. U.S. Bank Stadium, you can see the sky through the window.
That's true.
Half the stadium. And you get those snowflakes made out of soap.
Yeah, the artificial snowflakes that are soap bubbles coming down. Well, okay. and the other one is you got to have a tailgate scene.
Right.
And to me, the House of Noise, that's 3 checks against it. And it's also not bird safe.
Well, that's 4 checks in your book and 3 in my book. I have Lambeau as number 1. I know you have Arrowhead as your number 1 and Arrowhead number 2.
So we flip-flop.
Yeah, we flip-flop on that. I got Levi's number 3, San Francisco. I enjoyed the experience there.
Well, we're both in harmony there. I love what they've done in Santa Clara. And again, a huge tailgate scene and a relatively new stadium. So we agree on that one. Number 4, I think we're a little different. A little biased, maybe?
It might be a little biased. I got Cleveland Browns Stadium. I experienced the tailgate scene last year when I was there. Been in the stadium. The only problem there is they want to do what you don't want anybody to do. They want to put a roof on that thing or build a new stadium. I'm saying, please, put the brakes on that.
Yeah, I actually like what they have in Cleveland. It's right on Lake Erie and all that. And I went for Miami, and this is an old venue that dates back to the 80s, but they renovated it for a Super Bowl a few years ago. They have a canopy now, so when they get that scorching hot heat that they often get in SoFlo, right, the fans are in shade, or those Miami monsoons that blow through. The fans don't get wet, only the field. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. You have Denver 5, I have Philly 5. So outdoor venues were the winners in our top 5.
Yeah, so the Athletic and 10K takes. One is Mars, one is Venus.
Yeah, pretty much.
It is subjective, I will say that.
Yes, it is. All right, more to come here on 10,000 Takes. Takes of the day coming up next.
The excitement is real at Fond du Lac Casino. With over 650 slots to play, there's always something going on right in the heart of downtown Duluth. Come in to enjoy 2 floors of entertainment where you'll find some of the hottest new games along with a number of the old favorites. Play at your comfort level all the way up to high stakes where the payouts can be huge. Relax in a comfortable atmosphere and maybe get a beverage while you gather and have fun with your friends. Open 7 days a week so you can
have a great time out at Fond du Lac.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earrings. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
10K Takes on television as we wrap up yet another episode. We'll have takes of the day here in a couple of minutes, but saw this story earlier in the week, Chicago Sun-Times, some other media outlets saying that the White Sox are exploring options. They may want to leave the South Side guaranteed rate field, Comiskey Park. They might go to the Chicago suburbs like the Bears.
Oh, boy.
Or dare I say it, Nashville.
Nashville.
But, we're seeing this trend, Wally. A lot of teams are leaving the central city or with the city limits and going elsewhere. 49ers to Santa Clara.
The Atlanta Braves.
The Atlanta Braves to suburban Atlanta. Exactly. Right. So could that happen with the White Sox? We'll see. It probably is just extortion on MLB's part. What about the Minnesota Timberwolves, though? We know at some point Mark Lowry and A-Rod are going to knock on Tim Walz's door, and they're going to have tin cups and say, we need money for a new venue.
Yeah.
There's no appetite here for it, so maybe they should explore the burbs.
Well, and there was just a renovation of Target
was.
Center. How many millions of dollars was spent on that
like the
renovation? Yeah, I thought that the Target Center renovation brought it up to another level. I mean, what more do you need? I guess I'm not understanding why they need a new venue. That's beyond me, but I mean, I think the sight lines are good in there. I know that they collapse it by putting those tarps up because now their capacity is like 16,000 instead of 19,000. They're just trying to charge more for the seats they do have. Oh, by the way, that's what that's about.
And they want a new arena that has a shrunk.
Right, they want 15 or 16,000.
They want to create demand.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's silly. If they're going to bring it to the suburbs, where would you bring it? I don't know. Brooklyn Center? There's plenty of room there.
Brooklyn Center,
all those closed buildings. And
Brooklyn Park used to have a lot of open space. There's still a little bit. Both of those cities are Hennepin County. I'll say this. All it takes is one mayor with a vision who wants his city to be, or her city to be in the news with a Dateline or, some reporter reporting from Brooklyn Park. And, you could wrap a financial package around it. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, well, it's been known to happen.
How about where the old North Stars Arena is? Bloomington.
Get rid of the IKEA. That'd be fine with me.
I'm okay with that. Get rid of all those couches and
those broken dressers,
the Swedish furniture and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Pedal.
All right. I believe we have takes of the day.
Yeah, we'll find out what your mood is. Grumpy Guardian, gullible Guardian, giddy Guardian, or maybe it's something else.
Yeah. Well, as you know, the Minnesota Vikings are one of 12 teams in the National Football League that have never won a Super Bowl. Of course, the Vikings haven't been there in 40-plus years now, and they've been there 4 times and haven't won it yet. But there's another list out right now. Did you know they are one of many teams that have made their way to the top of this list? It is the list that has teams with the most arrests since the year 2000.
Oh, boy.
So let's see where some of these teams in the National Football League fall. Number 5 on the list, Tampa. Okay. Number 4, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So something's going down in Florida.
What's up in the Sunshine State?
The County Mounties are out.
There you go.
They're keeping track of what's going on. Number 3 on the list, your Cincinnati Bengals. And there's a tie for first between the Denver Broncos and, yes, the purple, your Minnesota Vikings.
My.
Yes, your guy Jordan Addison, of course, adding to that list with his 140-mile-an-hour race down I-94 several weeks ago. So there you have it. Your Minnesota Vikings are on top in one category.
They're number 1 in the category where you'd rather be number 32.
Speaking of which, last on the list, the Houston Texans and the Detroit Lions,
which the last few years have been 2 of the worst teams in the NFL, which maybe proves that nice guys do finish last.
Apparently it does. Yeah, the Lions.
Boy Scouts.
Yeah, that's their problem. They're too nice.
Exactly.
The Lions are finally good at something.
Yeah, that's true. Now they got guys in trouble for gambling, so they finally figured it out.
That's what was wrong.
All right, well, the mood meter, let's see what it says. Oh, sarcastic Sam.
Yeah, very much.
Throwing shade on the purple
as
we get closer to the start of another NFL season. All right.
Whoopee.
Well, my take of the day, this comes from the Daily Passport. There are 5 buildings in the U.S. that have their own zip codes.
Okay.
I bet you knew that one of them was Empire State Building, New York City, right?
Okay,
maybe you did, maybe you didn't.
No, now I know.
Another one is the White House in Washington, D.C.
I would think that makes sense.
Send a letter to Joe Biden. Number 3, the General Electric plant in Schenectady, New York. Number 4, Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas. I know you love Walmart. They now own the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
And number 5, there is a method to my madness.
Okay.
This is a sports show, so you have to have a venue with its own zip code, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there it is. Dodger Stadium.
Wow.
Los Angeles. They call it Dodger Town, so if you want to send a postcard or a letter there, it's Dodger Town, Los Angeles, California, 90090.
And that's a shot of it probably much before the hurricane swamped Chavez Ravine.
It looks playable and dry right there. Yeah. The mail arrived that day, let's put it that way.
Didn't come by boat.
On that note, we got to go. Let's FedEx out those thank yous. One to Alex Yambrick, Paul Langfellow, David Weld, Rocky, Carl Lee, for Wally. I'm Eric saying so long. This is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.